before I begin the actual meat of the video, we gotta appreciate Michael Chandler a little bit. Okay, I will talk about his dirty fighting antics later on, but he outdid himself where even though we were expecting the unexpected, it was still unexpected. Never place any bets involving Michael Chandler. Here was my last Chandler video for context. He round 1 TKO'd the fighter, arguably the best chin in the division. He KO'd the fighter who has never been KO'd before, if we don't consider TKOs. He got submitted by the division's best boxer. He got TKO'd by the division's submission artist. And he went to decision with the division's knockout artist. And now, he did the most unexpected thing where none of us predicted it. We thought the crazy unexpected thing was Chandler KOing Charles Oliveria, but no, he went the distance with Charles and nearly did a Leon Edwards moment. Michael Chandler was Charles Oliveira's first opponent, okay? His first opponent to make Charles Oliveira go to round 4. That was the first time Charles Oliveira in his life went round 4 and round 5 in a fight. So now the algorithm and short attention span viewers hate me now. Let's begin the video. Let's call him Custom Shorts Charles. We saw a lot of different things from Charles Oliveira. So let's start with the surface level differences and then dive deeper. The big thing was it went to decision, where 2 extremely entertaining lightweights went to decision. Even stated in the post-fight interview where Charles said he was basically hunting for the finish the whole time, he also stated that he has evolved too.
Actually, this is MMA, and I think, all you want to do is win, and I think it only shows how much I evolved and how much I got better. An old Charles, or Charles from before, would have, tightened up a couple grips there and wasted energy, or would have exploded a little bit to get out of certain positions. All I wanted to do was win.
So yes, stylistically, this was also the best approach. Why not overwhelm this stocky explosion of a man with your control time and waste his energy, especially in the first few rounds? There wasn't that much complaints from what I saw in social media, but you can see Charles in a strong dominant position, not actually going for the choke. I feel like I should use the word squeeze to get the message around better. When I say squeeze, that alludes the idea that you still need to use up a lot of power to get the submission attempt going. So Charles was using some fight IQ to not actually attempt to finish the fight for every submission opportunity he got. And while we are in the topic of styles in this fight, we have to include the dirty fighting style, which Michael Chandler is weirdly proficient at. But the main part that angered the fans was the allowance of the dirty fighting by the ref. Obvious gestures of getting eye poked, hits back to the head, and fence grabbing. For me, I only heard one warning from the ref, and that was only the fence grab. I could be completely wrong though. And also, I can't hear what Charles was hearing in the fight, but I think he still wanted some reassurance from the ref. If you hold up, "Hey, I'm getting eye poked" gesture, the ref should at least say something like, "Oh, no, it's illegal," or just say no, carry on. I think Charles understands the word no in English, at least, so he can go to focus on the fight fully after saying that from the ref. But no, we heard nothing at all. And the last thing was Charles had a knee injury coming into the fight. So in summary, we saw a half-camp Charles Oliveira, kind of, which did reflect into the fight itself a little bit, just a little bit. It did look like Charles' striking was worse. Well, that is a very harsh statement, but it was, because he couldn't train sparring or striking in camp. That was the reason. There was nothing bad about that. It was also lucky because Chandler's striking IQ is pretty bad, so it's almost a get out of jail card. There wasn't really combinations in the fight in terms of stand-up that I can remember clearly. It was all timing and feints, just waiting for that money shot, and then the brawl begins. Charles was lucky in the 5th round where Chandler could have done something very dangerous, but overthrew his hook, and Chandler basically flew himself out of balance. You can say Charles wrestling is better too. But this video is going to be talking about Islam versus Charles too. So In saying that, I might not speak too much about Charles' wrestling. His ground game is head and shoulders above everyone else in the division, except for Arman Sarukian and Islam. So that's why I don't really want to talk about his wrestling performance translating to the foreseeable rematch fight with Islam. I just don't see Charles shooting against Islam stylistically. So here's the real meat of the video. How can Charles beat Islam in the rematch? Here are the conditions. So the first one is Charles needs to be injury free, like 100% injury free. I know Charles Oliveira's fighting camp in Brazil is notorious for hard sparring, but Charles, you are a more wise person. You've seen how good you are at fighting, especially this fight where you had half a camp, you couldn't go all out in fighting, and you still proved yourself to be extremely, extremely good with a 5-rounder. 5 minutes and 5 rounds, you still turned up very good. So maybe this could be a good lesson to think a little bit smarter for the next training camp against Islam. The second point is he needs to work on combinations and maybe head movement on the feet. Maybe a little bit of head movement. He's already got the power and accuracy, so if he can utilize combinations along those two giant attributes, he could be a lot more dangerous on the feet, which could overwhelm Islam. And he will probably not wrestle like he did against Michael Chandler. And I think the wrestling was for control time. I almost feel like Charles Oliveira wanted to have that extreme control time just so Chandler can stop cheating on the feet. Another point is just more validation, where Charles needs to stick being this wise version of himself that he explicitly said in his post-fight interview. It's very smart. A fight going the distance with Islam sounds kind of like a good idea. I mean, today he made history. This is the first time we ever saw a round 4 and 5 Charles Oliveira. Yes, there was the fight with Tony Ferguson that did go to decision, but it was only 3 rounds. So seeing championship rounds Charles for the first time, and he was a great fighter, might be foreshadowing greatness. Oh, well, maybe. Championship rounds Islam is also no joke too, as seen with Dustin Poirier. But maybe, in Islam's perspective, especially when he's tailoring his fight camp for the Charles rematch, the last thing he could be thinking is that Charles Oliveira will be more dangerous in round 4 and 5. So this surprise tactic from Charles, with his already great power and accuracy, and maybe working on combinations more, could actually do something. And yes, I've been disregarding the fact that Charles could be fighting Arman Sarukian. Okay, Arman could beat Islam, and that would change the whole light division landscape as we know it. But let's just say Islam beats Arman Sarukian somehow, or, well, I would say he is not the underdog, so let's say it's just going as expected, and this is the situation we have here. So that is all for today.